everyone. Welcome to episode 425 of This is Whole Life. We are live from Whole Life Church in Orlando, Florida, where every week we get together with the three, or maybe this week the four of us, and we talk about, go a little deeper into the message that we have from the previous week here at Whole Life Church. Of course, that conversation, well, it should include you. And if you haven't watched one of our services online and been a part of our online family that asks a lot of the questions that we go over every week, and sometimes they come right from the front row. People are logged in and they're texting questions right from the worship center every week. You can join the conversation by sending an email to podcast@wholelife.church or voicemail or text 407-965-1607. And before we go any bit further, I've got to say that I'm pretty excited this week because there's someone sitting to my left. We're sitting at a table this week, so the old has become new, and Ken is still. If I turn my body a little bit this way, Ken is still on my right hand, and kind of across into my left is Melanie, as always.
Yeah, I miss my lounge chair.
All right, we may have to talk about this revamp and what the goals are. And directly to my left. Well, why don't you introduce yourself and tell the folks who you are and how awesome you are. No pressure.
Well, so first of all, humble. Yeah, I would like to say that I'm very smart in Portuguese, so sometimes it's hard to express myself in English.
Would you like to introduce yourself in Portuguese?
No, it's okay.
You could.
Yeah. So my name is Lucas. I am the digital creator here at Whole Life. Now I'm very excited about this, being at table sat with you guys.
So how'd you get roped into this?
What is that?
How'd you get roped into this?
I mean, you first start going to the bathroom once and seeing a sign at Whole Life Church, and this is when everything started.
Oh, he's already in.
I feel like there needs to be a little more explanation.
Yeah. So
we effectively advertise in our bathrooms.
That's right. We do.
That's right.
We have ads up on the.
And when you answer an ad here from the bathroom, it just might be you may eventually become employed here.
It might change your life. Going to the bathroom at Whole Life might change your life.
It's a life-changing experience, guys. The bathroom is very comfortable.
Well, and for a lot of people, that's an important thing. Like where I go, I like to know that they're. So why we go to Buc-ee's. I mean, yeah, I like the brisket sandwich, but I really go because I know I can go to the bathroom in peace and quiet, and it's clean, right? And there's no waiting usually. So.
Well, Randy, I feel like I know you so much better than I did 5 minutes ago.
Exactly. It's a big deal to me. I like it. So.
Well, you have a different experience than I do there.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, what's your experience at Buc-ee's?
Clean, yes.
Yeah.
Peace, quiet.
But you get the.
There's always a line.
Yeah, but usually, like for the stall I mean, I don't know what it's like in the ladies, obviously, but in the men's bathroom, there's more stalls. Like, and they go and they have the tall doors.
That's true.
I do like the tall doors.
Yeah.
And the wraparound. It's really nice. So that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Okay.
I'll make plans to visit.
It is.
You haven't been to Buc-ee's?
It is a family trip.
All right, that's it. We got to plan a beach day with Lucas, and then on the way we stop at Buc-ee's and get lunch. Okay,
Yeah, there you go.
This will work. All right. So as usual, we do have an email this week. And it says, "Hey, Randy, I really enjoyed Ken's message on Sabbath. I, too, consider myself a political junkie." Do we know who this is? "The political events of the last 10 days, as I write this, have been shocking and extraordinary. I appreciate that Ken addressed this subject in the way that he did. And for all my fellow political junkies out there, I think we need to be cool-headed in both our public duty as citizens as well as being civil with others as Christians. It's hard to do, as I know from past experience. In fact, until a few years ago, I was guilty of some pretty boorish behavior towards those who I did not agree with politically. Wish I could take it back. Friendships are much more important than politics." Like I said, I really appreciate what Ken said last Sabbath, and I'm looking forward to his message series in October. It certainly takes a stout heart to take on a subject like this, and I'm proud of him for doing so. As always, I'm keeping the Whole Life family in my prayers. Carolina Dave. So there you go.
All right.
Carolina Dave, I'm not going to leave you hanging out there even for a moment. I think I'll speak for myself. Boorish behavior towards those who I did not agree with politically. A lot of us can wear that hat, and at least at some point, we've worn that hat in our past. I will go there with you as well and wish you could change things. And all you can do is hopefully find that person or people or groups and say, man, I'm sorry, I'm a different person and I can do this a little bit better now, hopefully. So, and thank you for the prayers, as always. The thing that made me laugh the hardest Sabbath morning was, your lead pastor's been around for a while. And how do you know this? When you do the in-church, live to the internet shout out going like, hey, I need some church appropriate hobbies. Ken didn't just say, hey, yell out your hobbies, because that could be dangerous. And that's not throwing shade at anyone. It's just a fact of life if you're not thinking about it. And the smile on Ken's face when he said that just made me laugh like, hey guys, just remember this, where we are, church appropriate hobbies. And you heard pavement scraping. And so
I scheduled a hearing checkup on Monday.
And I thought that person was referencing me. And I'm like, well, that's something I try to avoid while doing my hobby is pavement scraping.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Keep it on two wheels, keep the shiny side up, keep the, keep the skin where it's supposed to be, all those good things. So in my hobby is, of course, motorcycles. I've been riding motorcycles. Someone asked me when the first time in the chat I was on a motorcycle, and it was when I was still in diapers. So it was about probably 6 months old. And there's a picture in my mom's scrapbook of my dad with a pair of shorts and flip-flops, my brother in a pair of shorts and a T-shirt, and me in my diaper sitting on the tank of my dad's motorcycle. And a ticket is also underneath of that photo. And you would think, well, it must be like no helmets, or Wisconsin at that time, I believe, did have a helmet law. But no, it was 3 people on a 2-person vehicle, and he got a fine. I think it was $15, and that would have been about 1971, 72, something like that. So it's been a long time. So that is my absolute positive favorite hobby. Really good coffee comes in a close second. So Ken, favorite hobby? I know you said one, but you got to have more than just that, right?
More than reading?
Yeah.
No, that's it.
That's it? It's your only hobby?
No.
I heard you work out on the weekends.
Here and there.
So that's a
I
hobby?
wouldn't call that a hobby. That's
is it for enjoyment?
That's work.
Oh, that's work. Okay. Oh, okay. Could
Work
be a
I
hobby.
don't even get paid for. There you go. Yeah.
Could be a hobby. So anything else other than reading?
Oh, I mean, I like playing sports of all different kinds. So everything from soccer to, ping pong to whatever.
Were you secretly raising your hand when you were calling out those pickleball people?
Maybe a little bit.
A little bit?
I
Okay.
actually do like pickleball.
I felt like that.
Yeah.
I felt like that maybe.
Yeah,
Okay.
I like that. I love putting together puzzles. That's on my
Ooh.
I have a 1,000-piece puzzle going on my table right now.
Do you? You and my
do.
dad would get along. He loves puzzles.
Yeah. I kind of like having a big puzzle going at all times if at all possible.
Well, I was usually one going at my parents' house in the basement. So, how about that? All right. You're next.
I'm next.
Melanie.
Ken said he hated it when people ask him this question.
Yeah, I was trying not to glare at Randy for.
I'm the same way because I never have anything that's exciting to say, and people look at me the way that they look at you, Ken, when you say you like to read. I also like to read. I think probably maybe one hobby that I have is I like to fix things. So I like to.
Ooh.
I like to stand down furniture and
You're not alone.
stain it or paint it or fix it if it's broken.
Coming up, you're going to find out you're not alone.
I am.
So like fix it, handy woman kind of stuff.
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
I do. I can. Well, I've seen that. I've seen that in you. So that's your only hobby. You sing.
Well, he doesn't take. Doesn't,
know,
you threw him something and he wants more.
I know.
He's trying to be helpful. He's trying to make me sound more interesting.
Well, this is the family that embraces hobbies. So
That's right.
we're trying to embrace.
Okay, so I like to look for really cool used books in thrift stores.
Ooh, I
I
like
like
that.
to do that,
Okay.
and then I read them. So there
I
we
like
go. We're back to
sleeping.
the
And do you
beginning.
actually read them?
That's a good
I
one.
do. Yeah.
And okay, all right, Lucas, you're next. What's up? What's your favorite hobby? And I think I know what it is.
So I think for me it's basketball. So when I was a kid, my mom got a basketball hoop for me, and I have been attached to it since I was a kid. And for me, it's just like therapy. It's a way for me to get away of everything.
Are you really good? We have a pastor's team that needs some extra people on it.
count me
Now that we know.
count me in.
All right.
Oh, the pastor's team. So what? You're like 6'7", right?
No hell.
I'm going to give you a red wig, and you're going to say for me.
6'1",
6'1". See, there you go. That's a good size.
Yeah.
So I can see that. All right. So in the chat this week, Gabby, who was our online worship host, I thought she might have had the best. She said, "I like to consider myself a jack of all trades and a master of none when it comes to hobbying. I love starting projects and not finishing them. I like to call them hyperfixations. Anyone else?"
That's awesome. I love it.
Gabby, if you're listening,
that's amazing.
That just made me laugh really, 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 really hard. And I think we've all been there because the hobby either works. Because like I can watch somebody else do something really cool. Like I'm sure I could watch Lucas play basketball and go, "That's pretty cool." But I stink at basketball. I don't shoot well. I don't dribble well. I don't do anything well in basketball.
We can be on a team. Or actually, probably shouldn't be on a team.
Yeah, we probably
We can be
we can be the rotating last guy
Yeah.
out. Like when you need a breather, I can come in and be just as horrible.
I mean,
we
I
go.
noticed I haven't been invited to join the basketball team, so I don't know what that's about.
We have
Whatever.
to work on that.
invitation on the way, Melanie. You can climb on Randy's shoulders or whatever.
And that'll make us about 6 foot. That'll be the two of us together. That'll be awesome. That'll be awesome. I'm sure we'll dominate something. I don't know what, but it'll be
We'll
something.
get it done.
So we spent part of the message kind of talking about our hobbies and then we had a family conversation, which I thought went really, really well. And in the chat, people were open to that idea, which I was a little bit surprised at how many people said, "Thank you, Ken, for having for having this message and for sitting down," because when it's bad when your dad pulls up the chair, right? And Ken was like, "All right, I'm pulling up the stool. Feel like I need to be sitting down while we have this conversation." You're like, "Uh-oh, we're gonna get scolded. We're in trouble." And actually, it was the absolute difference. It was the absolute opposite of that, in fact. And I felt like it was something that kind of like that family conversation where it's like, "Hey, the guys, this is something we should probably be watching out for." And we talked about it a little bit on last week's podcast. If you haven't heard that, just go back one in your feed and you can kind of, we talked about the news as Carolina Dave talked about of the past 10 days and the assassination attempt on Donald Trump and, how we can be better together. And we'll talk about some of the questions that you guys came up with and in the chat because and some of the questions that you sent in, we had voicemails this week. We had text messages, we had emails. So obviously something was trigger's a bad word. Let's not use the word triggers. But it was resonating with people because I think we're all thinking the same thing with the political climate that we have now. Obviously, what happened over the last 10 days, and I want to start with one because this will kind of piggyback what we talked about last week. And this was a voicemail from someone who wished to remain anonymous. They say, "Ken talked about being like Jesus first and foremost. But in today's world, when you say those words, the context and connotation that comes to mind has to do with messaging maybe coming from the evangelical right. Is it possible to say those words to be like Jesus without any political baggage or having someone think you're leaning a certain way because you said something that could be attached to a party or to a candidate or to an idea even of what people believe something to be?" How do we say I really want to be like Jesus, but I'm not necessarily tied to anything other than to that idea and maybe the way you described it, Ken?
Yeah, I can appreciate that. There are groups that have, there are definitely groups that have taken Christianity and used it for political advantage. And depending on where you sit in the audience, you will think the other party is who I'm talking about. And I think that's the little bit of the tricky part as a lead pastor at a church is that at Whole Life we have a number of people who who have voted or vote Republican consider themselves a part of the Republican Party. We have a number of people who consider themselves a part of the Democrat Party, vote that way. Independent, Green, Libertarian. I'm sure there's others that I didn't mention. And what I was hoping to do on Sabbath was not so much make a political commentary on who is right, who is wrong, as much as set some boundaries with how we engage with each other here at Whole Life. Not even necessarily how you engage, well, that's not true. Yeah, how we would engage as members of Whole Life. And I think that one of the things that I hope that didn't get taken away from that was that you don't have the absolute right to speak out against what you consider to be things that are hurtful, painful, things that are not correct, that are wrong. You know, I'm a big fan of people speaking to injustice, speaking to all these different things. But, you know, whenever we start using words like injustice, my friends who are Republican go, oh, there you are, you're a Democrat. And when they say, well, talk like Jesus, then, oh, there you are, you're a Republican. Because a lot of these phrases get picked up by political parties and used as weapons in the political fight for supremacy. And I think one of the hard things for me is I do have a lot of political views. I grew up in that space, but I don't want to be the pastor for the people who just think the way I do. I want to be a pastor for everybody in this church. And one of the things that you have to really ponder is what you're trying to accomplish. And for me, that's helping people love Jesus better and grow in their journey with Jesus. And then how do you help people do that in a way that they can hear? Because if if I say Joe Biden is the worst president this country's ever had, or if I say Donald Trump is the worst president this country has ever had, immediately there's about, I would guess, at least 30 to 40% of our congregation that immediately tunes out everything else I have to say on everything from there on out. It's like, how could you be a fool and think that? And so my goal, and I think where it gets really tricky is what do you do in situations where there are genuinely evil leaders? What do you do in those situations? And the Seventh-day Adventist Church did not particularly do a good job in Germany during World War II. There was a lot of actual support for the Nazi Party, for Hitler, from people who are Seventh-day Adventists. So the question becomes, at what point do spiritual leaders speak up against leaders in this world? And certainly there's a place for it. Bonhoeffer did that, spoke up. I would also note that he took a long time to think about how he wanted to do that.
I was going to say,
and
that was
the way that he went about doing it and when he did it. But I don't know if there are easy answers to this. Well, in fact, I know there aren't. But what I do know is that I want to be the type of person that speaks up for the things that Jesus would speak up for. I would like to own that I don't always speak up for the things that Jesus would have spoken up for, in spite of wanting to or wanting to do what's right. We run into all kinds of different things. So in the conversation that I wanted to have on Sabbath, more than anything, I really wanted to have a conversation that would set the table for how we're going to have the conversation moving forward, how we're going to go about things. That there are people in our church who feel very deeply, very, very deeply, that the Democrat Party, that the Republican Party is the worst possible thing that could happen to America. And if you're listening to this and you are on one side, you'll be like, yeah, Ken, it's obvious. And yet the person sitting next to you will say, yeah, Ken, it's obvious, but they're on the other side of it. And what kind of distresses me is just how many families and households are divided by politics right now. in ways that are hurting families and hurting this country, I think. And I think one of the things I'm prayerfully thinking through is how do we navigate forward on that? How do we move beyond the ground rules to the deeper, harder conversations where people do get angry? And how do we have that conversation in a way that keeps people tuned in? Because it's one thing to speak out against evil and about bad things, but the goal of speaking out is to create change and to generally not simply to be a part of the chorus that's saying the same thing. We all say the same thing, so we all agree. I like to think that when we speak out, we do it in a manner that helps those that aren't seeing the injustice, that aren't seeing the hurt, that aren't seeing the way a policy is creating problems, that helps them think about it and helps them make adjustments. And so, again, tricky thing. Do I think I do it well? I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's.
Does anybody do it really well, though?
Because, I mean, you don't, to go back to the civil rights movement, you think about Martin Luther King's letters from a Birmingham jail when he writes to his white colleague pastors, and they're saying, well, just kind of ride the tide and, just wait, be patient. And King makes very impassioned call for no, injustice needs to be spoken about now. Why are we going to wait? So you read that, you think about that, and then on the other side of things, you think, okay, well, when is the right time to speak out? Is there a time where it's better to wait? Maybe not. Maybe it's time to speak up. And then you think about Jesus. You think about how Jesus went about doing things. And what I don't hear a lot of in the Gospels is Jesus railing against the system. I hear him speaking out about injustices, but I also don't really hear him going on about the evils of Rome.
The injustices were almost more against his party.
Well, even there, he speaks about individual. He speaks out against, at least the way I read the Bible, he speaks out against the things that the priests and leaders are doing that are causing hurt to the people. But you don't ever hear him call out Caiaphas. In fact, when he does say something, it's a kind of interesting thing that when I think it was at his trial where he said, oh, that's the high priest you're speaking about. And Jesus said, okay, well, let me take a step back then. And so I think it's one of those things that is, like I said, I think you really have to prayerfully and thoughtfully think about it. And as you go about doing it, I think one of the things I'm proud of is that I have had a number of people demonstrate quite clearly they have no idea where I stand on things. And I don't know if maybe I shouldn't be proud of that. But I think that sometimes I don't think that truth is all in the Republican Party, and I don't think that truth is all in the Democrat Party or any other party. I think that as hard as it is for some people to imagine, each party has some things that work, some things that really don't work. And for me as the pastor of a church, I think it's really important for me to take on issues and not parties.
No, that's what I was going to say is this person's question was kind of, how can you not get lumped in with just broad general statements? Like if you say you're for Jesus and you might get lumped this or thus. And part of it seems to be that, and I think
but to that question, how do you not get lumped in when you say I believe in justice? Like the person is talking about, I believe was talking about evangelical Christians that have that you see a lot of in the right-wing Republican Party. And so when you say be like Jesus, and if you're saying that's evangelical in tone, there's just some things I don't know how to reword in a way that takes that out of it. The same thing with the word justice. If you use the word justice, then you must be, a left-wing liberal Democrat. And so a lot of these words that are really significant and important have become loaded with political connotation. And, maybe if I could ask one thing is, can we at Whole Life, can we take that out of it and just agree that the word justice is used a lot in the Bible, and being like Jesus is what we've been charged to do in the New Testament? And if certain groups that we disagree with, we don't like, or whatever, have co-opted those terms, can we just take them back? And I don't know.
Well, can we get to the next step of the conversation where if you say that, either one of those, if you say justice or you say a different word, where I can have, you can give that person time to explain, because I feel like it's an immediate lump and a move to the side, and then nothing ever happens from there, because it's then assumptions are made that if you believe that about this issue and not, then I kind of know where you are across the spectrum. And I feel like, and maybe this is, there's a lot of rhetoric. We've talked about that last week. But I think also I see a lot of people that are willing to say, not be pigeonholed, like you just said. Maybe people don't know where you stand as maybe a left or right or even center. And I think that's because more and more people, I feel like, me personally, like, are warming up to the idea that, well, Ken might agree with right on this issue, but left on this issue. And here he's like, look, maybe this is one of those things where I'm just kind of in the middle. Like, I think a little bit of each, if we put those two together, maybe that would work. To me, that makes a conversation easier, because then I can go, oh, you've really thought about all of this. And you're not just saying, like, the worst things I hate are the things that are most divisive to me right now is like, hashtag vote blue, hashtag vote red. Like, we haven't thought about, like, there could possibly be any other ideas outside of those that maybe we should be incorporating, where if you look at everything individually and you go, I really like that piece, and I really like that piece, and I really like that piece. And the person that kind of brought that to me is one of my favorite people, who initially we were like, oh, totally opposite. We thought we were totally opposites. And when you start breaking it down and you let someone get past the, oh, I believe in justice and I'm not going to assign that to anything other than when you explain it to me, then I feel like we have a conversation where I really get to learn, even though Melanie doesn't want to tell me what her superpowers are and what her hobbies are, but I get to know Melanie a little bit more, where it's like, hey, we can disagree in this, but we have this one in common. Now we've built at least a corner that we can talk about, we can think about, and maybe even come up with solutions that we think are important, and then maybe find a candidate that would maybe stand for that and go, well, at least I can stand somewhere on my principle and go, I voted for this person because of this. And that may seem weird to someone, but it feels like then you've created a space where there's a space to go deeper with the other things that maybe we disagree with, because it's like, well, obviously you're smart because you understand this piece that I understand. I think we can work from that.
Well, and I think you identified one of the problems, because, and Randy, you and I have had lots and lots of conversations.
Yeah.
And we've disagreed a lot and we've agreed a lot.
Yeah.
It just depends on what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
The problem is we're not voting on specific issues.
No.
We're voting for candidates. And so there's a conglomeration of issues and quote unquote solutions to issues that fall under the umbrella of whoever that candidate is. So I think it's really difficult. You can only swim in the middle for so long without having to make a decision about, all right, well, which issues then are going to be the most important issues that I feel strong enough about that I have to vote for this candidate. Because unfortunately we can have conversations and I think that's fantastic. But when it comes down to it, at some point, I think you have to stand up for what you believe in.
Sure.
And sometimes, whether we like it or not, that means voting for a particular candidate.
Oh, absolutely. For me, it takes the sharpness out. You could say you could vote against the person that I think would do a better job or would address the issues that I would like to see addressed. But if we have common ground, then I feel a lot less, I think, because we hold these so personal, because I know we've had those conversations. It's like, oh, well, I mean, I wouldn't vote that way, but I totally can see why Melanie would vote that way because of this and thus. And that, while that's not at the core of what I see as the major problems, I can see that it is the core for you. And so then it doesn't, and maybe that's just a personal thing, but to me, that's what has softened the divide between even myself, family members, where it's like, you can be pro hard one way or the other. And I'm like, I don't understand why they're this way. But if you can get past and have some of those conversations, it's like, okay, I know this is how you're going to vote. But I also know that you're conflicted and there's not a perfect answer. And it's not saying that you support every last thing that, maybe you disagree with that person too. And I think that it puts us on a field where we all go, man, we struggle because we're different and we have different, not necessarily different values, but different ways of looking at those issues like you talked about, because it all comes down to that. But then I feel like we're more open to being graceful with each other and being and realizing, because you're my friend and I like you. And like you said, we've had a lot of conversations. Some agree, some disagree. But at the end, it gives me a feeling like we're both pushing for the same things, for a lot of the same things. And then there's other issues where, we're just not going to agree on those. And you're going to push one way, I'm probably going to push a different way. Or there's been parts of our conversations that has changed my mind, where I've said, you know what, I have never thought about it that way.
I'm glad I could help you, Randy.
Well, there you go. There you go. And
You've never changed Melanie's mind, though.
Well, that's probably true. That to me is the part, though, that when you can learn pieces, it helps people understand why someone might think of an issue that they haven't thought about yet. Because if you just stay on this side or that side, I don't feel like there's anything that, I just don't feel like you learn a lot. Because listening to the politician, I know they're lying, because that's what they do. That's their job.
Well, yeah, and you don't know what any of the ulterior motives are in that. But I think conversation is really important.
Yeah.
And I think that, like you said, Randy, I think that what Ken said really resonated with a lot of people who were almost desperate to talk about it now that somebody has opened the door to talk about it.
Yep.
And I think we have to know each other. We have to know each other's stories, because Randy, you may not realize, you would never assault me, but you may not realize how voting for a particular person who is going to do something that ends up being an assault on me, you may not understand that unless we have that conversation. So I think that's partly it's understanding, because I think that we get so caught up in the buzzwords and the phrases and, the memes and whatever that we don't actually look at what happens when the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
When whatever that policy is stamped, we're not recognizing what is actually happening to real people.
Yeah. And I think what you said, opening the conversation, and that might have been the best part of what that was when Ken pulled up the stool, was giving everyone a opportunity to go, it's okay to talk about it here. And if we do it with Jesus, our best intentions and our best, as much as we can be Jesus and like Jesus and do it in that fashion, then I think it was almost like a collective sigh of relief. But I think you were right. It was that the permission has somehow been given. Dad called a meeting and now it's okay to do it. And that sounds simplistic, but I think you're right.
Well, and I think it's fair to point out that Jesus didn't say don't have enemies. Jesus said love your enemies. And, you and I can talk and we can be friends, but I'm not sure that necessarily conversations are going to turn turn enemies into friends. I think it's still figuring out how to navigate those relationships for people whose ultimate goal, is shared. It's all the other pieces maybe that are in opposition. How do we still worship together? How do we still grow together? How do we still converse together? And how do I love you if you are my enemy?
For me, I started to look at different opinions as an opportunity to exercise your Christianity in a certain way. So after the service, something that really stick to me is that it's a matter of priority. So if I'm trying to seek Jesus first, why would different opinions be something to stop me to having a conversation with you and trying to, understand your background, where you're coming from, that shouldn't be a reason for me to create a relationship with you and have a relationship with you. So, yeah.
I like that.
People usually have a reason for why they are the way they are, why they think what they think. And usually the way to engage on issues that are very contentious is to try to look at it through the lens of the other person. That doesn't mean to agree with the way they were raised or to agree with that, but to understand, okay, this is where this person's coming from. This is what their life experience has been. This is what they're going through right now. What I've discovered in life for me is the more that I'm able to look at another person and see them, the more likely they are to look at me and be open to trying to see me and to hear it. And that's not always true. There's some people who are just genuinely mean people. They take advantage of that. They'll let you all day long see what's going on with them, but never give you a chance to respond. And there's a different way of handling that situation. There's boundaries. There's like, okay, well, look, if we're not going to actually, if there's not going to be good faith engagement, then this is not going to keep going. But I really like to think that a whole life that the majority of people who are here in good faith. They're here because they want to engage honestly. They want to know each other. They want to love each other. And it was a shame when Paul and Barnabas broke up their ministry because the two of them couldn't agree on John Mark. I happen to think one of them was right and the other one was wrong, and I don't think it was Paul that was right. I think Barnabas was the one that was correct, and yet here Paul goes on to write, 80% of the New Testament. I always hate seeing people divided and not being willing to talk to each other. Even though I understand there's a time and a place where that probably is what needs to happen, but my natural instinct is always to run towards conversation, to try to find reconciliation, to figure out how to see people get along and have conversations. I just know that my life in particular has been made richer by my friends who have very different viewpoints than I do. I've watched myself grow, become more nuanced in how I see the world, because I know people who are different than me, who see the world differently than me. And that doesn't mean I've given up everything I believe in. There's things I still hold on to tightly that I have friends who very much disagree with, and that's okay.
Yeah.
For me, it's okay. So I think that we'll have more conversations. I imagine that we'll have more difficult conversations in the next 3 or 4 months here.
Yep.
I'm sure that's going to happen. And I'm hopeful that if, we remember those 4 things, if we remember to be like Jesus, if we remember to that Jesus' kingdom is not of this world, that in the end God wins. And what was the first one? I can't remember my own points now. Be like Jesus, and then there was the first one. I don't know.
It's the most important.
Be like Jesus. That covers everything.
Yeah, I think that one does.
Oh, all right. That was it. That our identity is in Christ.
The identity.
Our identity is in Christ first. I'm hopeful that if we can do that, that we will be able to come through this no matter what candidate we vote for, and still love each other. And still, in Brene Brown's words, assume good intent. Assume that the other person has good intentions for what they're doing. There's also a time when you realize that there aren't good intentions there. And I've run into that. Like I said, I covered politics, so I'm very well aware of what politicians are like. I'll never, ever forget one politician who rolled out a bill on, we'll just say it was a Wednesday. I covered it at the time. When I covered it, I told him, I said, you know what, this is going to be really unpopular. And he was like, yeah, but it's the right thing to do. And I said, well, kudos to you off camera. I said, kudos for you for doing what you believe is the right thing to do, even though you know it's going to be unpopular. Well, I ran the story that night, and he caught it in every which way. He got emails, he got talk radio, lit him up. And the next day he called me up and said, I need you to come out and need to do a follow-up to the story from yesterday. And of course, this report, I'm like, sure, that sounds great. I mean, this was big news. Sure, let's follow up. He's like, yeah, you mischaracterized what I said. And it was on video.
Like,
what do you mean I mischaracterized it? And yeah, I know that you can cut things to look a certain way. This was kind of black and white the way that it went.
Yeah.
It was not it was there. And I had actually gone out of my way, and that was, I think, the thing that was really frustrating for me. I'd actually gone out of my way because I knew it was so unpopular to make sure that I was quoting him exactly the way he wanted to be, quoted. And so we go back for day 2. And, Ken, people didn't understand. I'm withdrawing the bill, and he made some, I can't remember what his excuse was for why now. And I really grilled him. I gave him a hard time. I really kind of went, and he held his ground that, he was withdrawing. It was a bad idea. And he somehow had learned better in 24 hours and whatever. And I remember as I was packing up, my photographer put the video camera away and walked back to our vehicle, and I looked at the politician and I said his name, and I said, I don't think you believe a word of what you said to me today. I think you believe what you said yesterday. And he winked at me and walked back inside. And that was the day I lost my political religion. I was like, oh my, and I've seen it happen so many times where, it's about power. It's not about what's right. It's about power. It's about doing what will get you reelected. What will get you reelected will put money, and my friends, I've covered both sides of the aisle, and it's on both sides.
Yeah.
It's not one side. And for those of you who think it's on one side, I'm sorry. I've covered both, and I can also tell you, and I genuinely mean this, I have covered some of the most wonderful human beings on this planet who are in politics, and they're not in it for power. They genuinely care about the people that they represent. They genuinely care about doing what's right. I think about one particular senator who was a part of the same party as the person that I was just telling you a minute ago. This guy was in the minority in the legislature, and the next year his party got into the majority. And what happens when these things happen is minority party always has fewer staffers and worse accommodations. That's the way it works, because when you're in power, you get the good offices and you get a larger staff budget, and when you're not, you get the worse offices, a smaller budget. And I remember going to this guy's office, and I think he was the majority whip for his party. I went to his office a couple months after they'd all been sworn in and they were in their office, and he was in the same office he had been in the year before, and he had the same number of staffers, even though he had more responsibility. And I remember looking and going, what are you doing? You need more help. And he was like, no. He said, I want to be consistent. And I, at the time, said that the majority didn't need as many people. And now that I'm in the majority, I'm going to keep my word. And he did it. And I was so impressed by that man. And I've seen people on the other party do similar things. And so my point is, when I look at people, I look for character as much as I can. It's hard to know. I guess the point that I just would want people to make is there genuinely are thoughtful, good people on both sides of the aisle. There really are. And when we demonize whole groups of people, it becomes problematic. I think it's one thing, though, to speak out against platforms of parties that are destructive. And I know before, as a pastor, I had no problem saying the things that I thought. But being a pastor and being a reporter, one of the things I've discovered is you got to be careful when you do that. Not because, there's a time and a place, but you've got to be careful, because there are really genuinely good people that when you speak out against the person or the party or whatever it is that they uphold, they just won't listen anymore, no matter how much sense you're making. Yeah. So
for sure.
But there is time where you have to do that too. So anyway, so much nuance to it. There's no easy answers to it. Yeah. And I often will walk away from these kind of things feeling very deeply unsatisfied too, because there's so much that you're like, there's things that I want to say and I'm not sure if it's the right thing to say, and later on you kick yourself and say, I wish I'd said more of this, less of that.
or even what you ended up voting for, and then later on go, man, didn't see that one coming, or I really wish, or this one thing is so important to me, and I know I'm going to have to just choke the rest of it down to get that one, and then I hope that they're being truthful enough that the one thing that I'm really going after, that they're going to hold their promise and they're going to follow it through and they're going to fight for it. And then when they don't, if they don't, you're like, wow, that was bad on me. All right, we had a ton of questions about politics, but I feel like overall we've covered everything in theory of what the actual questions were. I want to get to, we had everyone chiming in. We had people sending pictures in towards the end of themselves doing their hobby. And Nashville Tim, that was good to hear from you. I collect gold coins. Any extras? Anybody wants to donate? Let me know. See, I mean, you
can just drop them off here at the office.
Yeah.
I don't know about that, but I have some DVDs that.
Yeah.
Because Nashville Tim also collects DVDs, right?
I know that.
And tennis rackets. You didn't mention that?
Tennis rackets.
He collects the vintage tennis rackets.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
And lots of other things.
And see,
he was the one we should have had seen in Melanie.
I know,
wait a minute.
really, he should be here because my hobby is getting rid of things.
Getting rid of his hobbies.
Somehow we make it work.
Wasn't it him that had the rock collection too that I picked up on the moving truck?
Yes.
Multiple boxes of rocks.
Multiple boxes.
See, Ken,
I
one in the driveway.
I remember a few of those boxes.
One of the days in the driveway. Maybe there was something in there you missed. Yeah,
It must have been.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So
well, you're welcome to come over and
check it out. So Cliff said, I enjoy fixing things for people. So see, you have people who enjoy your hobbies. Okay. See, ALBJ said, my hobby is a collection of vanity license plate photos. Most I've snapped, but some friends share photos to add to my collection as well. I have been one of those people on more than one occasion. Good to see that you're still doing that. And he has an online album closing in on 2,500 different vanity plates. So that's but online. See, that's not a clutter thing either, which that was what some people
his wife must be very happy with that collection.
Right? That's because she may not even know it exists.
You know, there's something to be said for Pinterest boards.
Yeah.
Like, how about if you collect it there?
Yeah. I like that.
You can have as many as you want.
No one's stopping you. Go.
You're run out of storage.
That's it. T. Cinco said, writing is definitely something that I love that brings me joy. So there's a hobby. Mm-hmm. Elaine said, my husband and I collect Christmas ornaments from different places we visit. So your Christmas tree, my mom's kind of that way. She's got, depending on the year, it could be angels. It could be, she has different themed trees, even in some colors. Yvette said, I collect postcards from around the world, and I have over 500 of them. It's my little way of seeing the world. So there's another one. Let's see. Morris said, prayer walks are my hobby. There you go. And Anonymous said, reading is one of my hobbies. With that said, I came across an article called The Challenge of Politics and Faith by Bettina Krause. You can Google search it. I found it to be very interesting and speaks to what Pastor Ken is talking about with us today, so you may want to check that out. There was a couple of them that said, my question in the beginning was going to be about how can hobbies align with God, but you pretty much answered that. And someone else said, but what if my hobbies become my escapism, where I'm not taking what I'm really kind of not wanting to think about, or I don't want to address in my life, and I'm just throwing myself into my hobby. Like, can a hobby become a bad thing if we use it as a crutch and not and avoiding what maybe we should be thinking about or asking God about?
Almost anything that you get too much of it can be a bad thing.
That's true.
With hobbies, if they replace Jesus in your life, then and Jesus being your Savior and the person who will ultimately help you escape this world, then that can be a problem. I also think that I think that there is a certain element of escapism to hobbies that isn't bad. That it is a chance to get your mind off of other things and to take a little bit of a break and to do something different. Now, if that becomes you can't live without it, you can't manage without it, that's probably problematic, right?
Nuts.
But
so Ken, maybe you should be a little bit more specific, because I think lots of different people are going to hear lots of different things when you say if that hobby takes the place of Jesus. What does it take for a hobby to take the place of Jesus?
That's a good question, Melanie. Do you have an answer to the question?
I don't actually. That's why I'm asking on hashtag asking for a friend.
Yeah. I think something that takes the place of Jesus is something that takes up your time and your and you believe is what you run to instead of Jesus when times are tough, and in place of Jesus, and excluding Jesus.
Yeah.
Those are the things that I would say. I think that, a lot of times we can kind of use the word addiction for things that become so, we have to have them or else we can't function. And I think that that's what I would say is putting it in the place of Jesus, where that hobby basically completely robs you of time with Jesus. It robs you of time with the people that you care about, to their exclusion. Those would be some basic off the cuff ideas about that.
So
did that help the asking for a friend, or no?
No,
The friend still
not
looks.
really.
The friend is still
Just
looking a little bewildered.
Just because, I mean, when I was a kid, well, I don't know. I guess this kind of still carries over. But I was such a little perfectionist. And if someone had said, your hobby can't take the place of Jesus or can't be the thing you run to instead of Jesus, I would be like stressed out. Like, okay, I can play with my dolls for 30 minutes, but then I have to pray for 30 minutes. Okay, I can work on this puzzle for an hour, but then I have to read my little children's Bible for an hour. And I don't know that ever really goes away when you put something that is like a material activity, where you say your job or your relationship or your hobby or your anything, and put that up against Jesus, like trying to figure out, well, what does that mean exactly? And what does that look like? Because depending on whatever your psychological noise is or your spiritual noise is, you're going to hear that differently.
Mm.
Sure. I think that, but no, I think that's such an interesting question, because I'm sure that, your friend is not alone in hearing that. And I think that, I don't know, I think that for me, one of the harder things is that there's a little bit of intuition that goes into this, that you're right. There are people who hear, don't let anything get in the place of Jesus. And so then, like you say, you start, is 30 minutes too long? If I enjoy it too much, is that? And I don't know. For me, one of the things that I can very much notice is the things that are helping me deepen my relationship with Jesus, and the things that I can tell are not bringing me closer to Jesus. And that would probably be, and I think that that's different for different people. I don't think it's always the same thing. I think that, I can listen to certain music and feel very much closer to Jesus. And I have friends that feel very far away from Jesus when they're doing it. And I'm not, at one point in my life, I thought, well, one of us has to be right and the other one of us has to be wrong. Because if I feel closer to Jesus and you don't, then that's your lack of spirituality, or that's your lack of maturity, or it's this, that, or another, whatever. Where I'm at right now in my life is I just believe that there are certain things that, depending on your personality and who you are, make you feel closer to Jesus, and certain things that are neutral and certain things that are not neutral. And I think that each one of us needs to just kind of pay attention to it the same way that we pay attention to our physical well-being. That if you feel an ache or whatever in a tooth, maybe it's just a sensitivity there. But if it's every day and it starts hurting worse and worse, maybe it's time to go see a dentist. And I think the same thing to me is a little bit true in our spiritual life, is that there's times in my life where I'm just not feeling it with Christ. I don't feel that, oh, I'm so close. And there are other times where I feel so close. I feel like, oh, this is amazing. I want to keep this feeling all the time. And there are times when I'm not feeling that, where I haven't done anything. It's not something that's, like, oh, I'm pushing God away. It's a season.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I think Jesus also, like we talked about last week, the laughter part of it. I also feel like when we have a hobby that we enjoy, and I think God likes it when we're enjoying ourselves, or we're taking that break. If that means for the workaholic, you're taking 30 minutes and you're listening to a podcast, or you're taking an hour and reading a book that that you're finding interesting and relaxing, and it's good for your health, it's good for your mind. And I think when we enjoy those things, I think God enjoys them with us. So part of that looking like we're waiting to be punished for doing something fun, or not working, or not worshiping. And I feel like that's, again, that part of that picture that a lot of us have struggled with by the way we were raised, or maybe it's just the way we feel. And that's not throwing shade. That's just saying you are who you are. But understanding that I really feel like if it's something that God has put on your heart in the way that you were knit together in the womb before all of this, and then this is what riding the motorcycle brings me joy. It's been diapers to nearly 53 years old. And so that
brings me anxiety.
And it brings Ken's like, no more announcements from the Harley.
But it does cause Ken to pray a lot more.
So I feel like God protects
for really selfish reasons. So is that
he's like, Randy won't show up to work tomorrow if he's in the high rent district. Bring him, if he's doing that pavement scraping, it's not good. So Lord, be with him. No, so I think we have to give ourselves permission in one way to say, yeah, it's okay to take some time and to do the things that we enjoy. And I think God's totally pro our hobbies that are good for us. And
I think
that's
balance is also key. I mean, I think, and that's kind of what was underlying what you were saying, Ken. I think balance. I don't think we need to overly spiritualize every single thing we do.
Yeah.
I also think that we, like you were saying, Randy, I think that God puts those things in us. And I think that God is just as creative in making us creative in the things that we enjoy.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know. Maybe we're probably saying the same thing, Melanie. But where I would change is I like to overly spiritualize everything. I think everything is spiritual in nature. I think that everything I do has a spiritual component to me because I'm a follower of Christ, and that doesn't necessarily mean that. And where that becomes problematic is the way that I was raised. There were some things that were spiritual and some things that absolutely were not. And there were some things that absolutely were not spiritual that was okay to do. And then there were some things that weren't spiritual that weren't okay to do. And I don't know. I just feel like, to me, it's either I'm doing it with Jesus or I'm not. For me, it's one of those things where, and that doesn't, to me, mean that I get everything perfect or everything is right. But to me, I just like to think that everything has, it's like Rochelle and I, we're going on 26 years of being married, and we have things that we do not like. I really enjoy, she really doesn't enjoy. There's really nothing though that I do that I'm not willing to talk to Rochelle about, even if she doesn't want to go do it. There's nothing that we won't discuss and say, I went and did this, and I'm going to be doing that, and Rochelle's going to go have a good time. I don't want to do that. And I don't know. Maybe is that maybe a little of a metaphor for Jesus? I don't know. I don't know.
No,
well, I think, and that's why I said overly spiritualized, because I think that we're in agreement that we should just be integrated people. Spirituality, and who we are should be integrated with everything else. So I think we're still on the same page.
And I feel like it's not all
just different paragraphs.
Just different paragraphs.
Yeah, maybe even chapters. Who knows?
Well, it's hard to be in a different chapter. I guess you can be a different chapter on the same page.
It's pretty close, I think. Well, they usually started at the top, so you're probably right.
I've seen it occasionally. It depends on the book.
Yeah, maybe those books that.
All I was saying, Ken, is I don't have to think about Jesus the whole time I'm putting a puzzle together in order to justify doing the puzzle. I guess
that seemed a little direct and a little abrupt.
It was very direct. I want you to know I don't always think about Jesus every time I put a puzzle together all the time either.
But I don't think. But the thought that I don't think we have to be thinking about Jesus with every thought while you're putting your puzzle together. When you're spending the time and when you're engaging with Jesus throughout the day, through prayers, through interactions that we have with our friends, and he's there and you feel him there, it's not always about that, I feel like I know he's there. So I'm doing this with him, even though I'm not just specifically thinking about that one piece. I'm at work. I don't think about Jesus every step of the way, although most of what everything we do at the church is about Jesus. But I'm not necessarily thinking about him sitting next to me or being right there with me every second, because I'm concentrating on the work I'm supposed to be doing. But then at the end of the day, I often think, what did I do today that Jesus would be pleased about? And it's like, wow, we had a great conversation on the podcast, or we had a great staff meeting where I got to learn something about Melanie, even though she doesn't like to share. And, Ken, was really abrupt, but I still love him anyway. And Lucas,
Wow, this is feeling really specific now.
No, but seriously.
Keep going, Randy.
Wait a minute. We didn't hear the Lucas one.
Oh, no, please
Well,
continue.
and Lucas just makes your life better. So,
you go.
That's right.
that's
I
how it is.
appreciate that, Randy.
All right.
Thank you.
I think we have covered just about all we can on this. And what I'm going to do is I have a song that I just want to briefly read you a couple of the lyrics, and you can go look up the whole song. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it's a little bit long. But it was one thing that it makes you stop and think, and it makes you think about all the decisions that you make and how they affect what people might think about you, and really what about yourself. It's the name of the song is "The World You Want." It's by a band called Switchfoot, and the lyrics for part of the song says, "You start to look like what you believe. You float through time like a stream. If the waters of time are made up by you and I, if you change the world for you, you change it for me. What you say is your religion. How you say it is your religion. How you love is your religion. How you, all your science is your religion. All your hatred, your religion. All your wars are your religion. Every breath is your religion. Is this the world you want? Because you're making it every day you're alive." And if you just stop and think about that, it's a catchy song that you can listen to. But if you actually think about every little piece, and I use the word religion how you'd like there, but it's really about who you are and your mantra and what you're putting out there. And I put that in the chat during second service, and multiple people had resonated, like, okay, I have to go listen to this song now. And it's just one that makes you think. It's a good reminder that how you act and all that we've been talking about with politics, but what you say, how you love, and then who you love, I think those are all just things we can think about as we think about how over the next couple of months we might need to remember that how we do and say and what all of those things are what people are going to be thinking we're about. No, wait, one more. The next week, what we have?
We have two more, actually.
Wait a minute. Oh, I didn't.
Nature and travel.
Nature and travel. I should have remembered that. Lucas told me yesterday.
Yes. the family
Nature
that
and travel.
travels
So the
together.
family that does what about nature?
Enjoys nature.
On Harley. Nature.
Enjoys the Florida weather.
Oh yeah, the Florida weather. No thanks. Is this summer? Is this a winter? Can this be seasonal?
Just have
Nature.
to take ice cream with you if you go out. And
Oh, it
Is
melts
nature
so
always
fast.
indoors or outdoors, though? Can it be indoors?
Ooh, Arboretum, anyone? I mean, we don't have one of those here.
aquarium.
I guess we'll find out on Saturday.
Zoo.
Stay tuned.
Oh, I guess that's kind of nature. Ooh, like SeaWorld must count, right? I've been in nature a lot lately. Aquatica, that's kind of
different
nature-ish
nature.
looking, right? Isn't it? No, maybe not. Okay, so that's going to be nature's this week, and then we finish with, what did you say, travel?
Travel.
Travel. Speaking of travel, guys, I'm a little bit petrified.
You gonna travel?
I am. We are traveling next week, just for a short week. It won't be long. So next week I won't be here.
I feel like he took your sermon a little too literally.
This will
I
be
don't know.
the first. I think this is the first podcast that out of 400 and some that you won't hear my voice.
Could you
I
maybe
don't-
pre-record a couple things?
Oh,
I
boy.
don't know. I don't think so.
we want to get. We need to get this one out of the way.
Yeah, I got like rip the band now. See, so
One of the reasons why Lucas is here.
that's right. Lucas is here, and in Lucas we trust to make sure this all goes well next week. And if it doesn't, you can still blame me. It's okay. Like Randy took the time off. What's the problem with that? No, we're going to be taking the auto train, so we're going to do a little traveling.
fun.
That's awesome.
And we're going to go up to what is it, Virginia, very close to DC, and then we're going to hit Philadelphia.
Good for you.
And we're going to do Americano things like Niagara Falls. Like I've never, none of my wife, myself, the kids, we haven't been to Niagara Falls. So we're going to do that.
Oh wow.
And then we're going to be back. And I look forward to being back with y'all in 2 weeks. So Guys, thanks so much for listening, for your questions, your engagement, and for sharing the show. And I appreciate y'all very much. Have a great week.